Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Padajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Padajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavajikacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Padavajikacharya Ashtotar the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Okay, we'll be on page 688 today. 688. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 8th day of December 2021 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in chapter 18 entitled Conclusion, the Perfection of Renunciation. Text 47 at the bottom of page 688. Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunah Padadharmat Swanushtitat Swabhava Niyatam Karma Kurvan Napnoti Kilbisham Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunah Padadharmat Swanushtitat Swabhava Niyatam Karma Kurvanapnoti kilbisham Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunah Padadharmat Swanushtitat Swabhavaniyatam Karma Kurvanapnoti kilbisham Shreyan Swadharmo Vigunah Padadharmat Swanushtitat Swabhavaniyatam Karma Kurvanapnoti kilbisham. Sayansa dharmo viguna. Paradharmat swanushtitat. Svabhavaniyatam karma. Kurvanapnoti kilbisham. Shreyan swadharmo viguna. Paradharmat swanushtitat. Svabhavaniyatam karma. Kurvanapnoti kilbisham. Shreyan swadharmo viguna. Paradharmat swanushtitat. Svabhavaniyatam karma. Kurvanapnoti kilbisham. Shreyan swadharmo viguna. Paradharmat swanushtitat. Svabhavaniyatam karma. Kurvanapnoti kilbisham. Michelle? Shreyan swadharmo viguna. Paradharmat swanushtitat. Svabhavaniyatam karma. Kurvanapnoti kilbisham. Zoomland.
Shreyan swadharmo viguna.
Shreyan swadharmo viguna.
Paradharmat su anushtitat.
Paradharmat swanushtitat.
Swabhav niyatam karma.
Svabhavaniyatam karma.
Kurvan napnoti kilbisham.
Kurvanapnoti kilbisham. Anyone else?
Shreyan swadharmo viguna.
Shreyan swadharmo viguna.
Paradharmat swanushtitat.
Paradharmat swanushtitat.
Svabhavaniyatam karma.
Svabhavaniyatam karma.
Kurvanapnoti kilbisham.
Kurvanapnoti kilbisham. Shreyan, better. Swadharmaha, one's own occupation. Vigunaha, imperfectly performed. Paradharmat, then another's occupation. Su anushtitat, perfectly done. Svabhavaniyatam, prescribed according to one's nature. Karma, work. Kurvan, performing. Na, never. Apnoti, achieves. Kilbisham, sinful reactions. Translation: it is better to engage in one's own occupation, even though one may perform it imperfectly, than to accept another's occupation and perform it perfectly. Duties prescribed according to one's nature are never affected by sinful reactions. Purport: one's occupational duty is prescribed in the Bhagavad Gita. As already discussed in previous verses, the duties of a Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, and Shudra are prescribed according to their particular modes of nature. One should not imitate another's duty. A man who is by nature attracted to the kind of work done by Shudras should not artificially claim to be a Brahman, although he may have been born into a Brahman family. In this way, one should work according to his own nature. No work is abominable, if performed in the service of the Supreme Lord. The occupational duty of a Brahman is certainly in the mode of goodness, but if a person is not by nature in the mode of goodness, he should not imitate the occupational duty of a Brahman. For a Kshatriya, or administrator, there are so many abominable things. A Kshatriya has to be violent to kill his enemies, and sometimes a Kshatriya has to tell lies for the sake of diplomacy. Such violence and duplicity accompany political affairs. But a Kshatriya is not supposed to give up his occupational duty and try to perform the duties of a Brahman. One should act to satisfy the Supreme Lord. For example, Arjuna was a Kshatriya. He was hesitating to fight the other party, page 689. He was hesitating to fight. Lost my place. He was hesitating to fight the other party, but if such fighting is performed for the sake of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, there need be no fear of degradation. In the business field also, Sometimes a merchant has to tell so many lies to make a profit. If he does not do so, there can be no profit. Sometimes a merchant says, "Oh, my dear customer, for you I am making no profit." But one should know that without profit, the merchant cannot exist. Therefore, it should be taken as a simple lie if a merchant says that he is not making a profit. But the merchant should not think that because he is engaged in an occupation in which the telling of lies is compulsory, he should give up his profession and pursue the profession of a brahmana. That is not recommended. Whether one is a Kshatriya, a Vaishya, or a Shudra doesn't matter, if he serves by his work the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Even Brahmins, who perform different types of sacrifice, sometimes must kill animals, because sometimes animals are sacrificed in such ceremonies. Similarly, if a Kshatriya engaged in his own occupation kills an enemy, there is no sin incurred. In the 3rd chapter, these matters have been clearly and elaborately explained. Every man should work for the purpose of yajna, or for Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Anything done for personal sense gratification is a cause of bondage. The conclusion is that everyone should be engaged according to the particular mode of nature he has acquired, and he should decide to work only to serve the supreme cause of the Supreme Lord. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and to all members of Sri Parampara, the disciplic succession. So, it's worthwhile recalling the 4th chapter, where Krishna explains why he appears, why he comes. And this famous verse, Yad Yadatadati Sheshas, Yada Yadahi Dharmasya Glane Bhavati Bharata Abhyutanam Dharmasya Tadatmanam Sajamyaham. That whenever and wherever there is a rise of irreligion and religious practice has become disorganized, I then advent myself, I manifest myself. Next verse describes what he does. Paritranaya sadhunam vinashayasha dushkratam dharma sangstapanartaya sambhavami yuge yuge. In order to protect the devotees, in order to annihilate the miscreants, and in order to reestablish dharma, I appear in every age, again and again. Now, he may not appear as two-handed Krishna playing the flute in every age, but he has some incarnation, or sometimes his representatives. The Bhagavad Gita is also Krishna. It's a literary incarnation. And so this appearance, he's appeared in this age. We certainly know there's plenty of discrepancies in the matter of dharma in this age. So it's highly needed. And so Krishna is very concerned. Why? Because without dharma, human society degrades very rapidly to animal society. Ahara nidra bhayamaitanangsha samanyamaitat pashabhir naranam dharma hitesham adhiko vishesho dharma nahina pashabhi samana. Hitopadesh declares that we have basically 4 things we share with the animals: eating, sleeping, mating, fearing, or defending. So what is it that makes human life different? Better. Dharma. Dharma hitesham adhiko vishesho. That's the difference. So without dharma, human society is basically animal society. And then the question is, well, what is that dharma? This was the question Arjuna was trying to solve at the beginning. He says, Samuda Cheta. I am now bewildered about what my real duty is, what the proper thing to do is. He's taking that role. He's been covered by Krishna. He's an intimate friend of Krishna, life after life. But he, the protagonist of the Bhagavad Gita, and he became bewildered about his dharma because he had a attachment and attraction for so many members on the other side that he was going to kill. And so you read the 1st chapter and the beginning of the 2nd chapter, you'll see. So then at some point he says, Karpanya dosho bahata swabhava prichamitvam dharma samuda cheta. The word Shreya, which appears in this verse that we just read, Shreyan, is the good, ultimate good. I am bewildered about what is good. I need you to tell me for certain, Krishna. Now I am your shishya. I'm no longer in the role of your friend. As Prabhupada explains, friends can go on talking for thousands of years and they'll never come to a conclusion. But if the shishya, and there's a qualified guru, and the disciple is hearing and imbibing that, then something can really be changed. You can change your nature. You can make some progress. So he says, now tell me for certain, what is dharma, and how can I act in such a way for my ultimate good? Shreyaksyan nishtitam, without doubt. So this is the change now. And then Krishna begins speaking Bhagavad Gita in 2nd chapter, text 11. So we also should be concerned, because we understand from the Bhagavad Gita right at the beginning that we're moving through all kinds of species of life. And now we've come to this human form, and human form is a juncture. It's the only form, really, where we have the intelligence to understand what the ultimate goal of life is, who we are, why we're suffering, and the process to solve this, to really break free of birth and death, old age, and disease, and regain our place in the spiritual world. Go back home, back to Godhead, Prabhupada's famous phrase. So that requires following the proper dharma that can do that. What is this dharma? So dharma, the root of the word dharma is dri, which means that which sustains, or the essential nature of something. I like to point out, those of you who heard these classes, there's a chair sitting over there. A chair has a dharma. You sit on it, and it supports you. There's all kinds of chairs, but without that quality, it's not really a chair, right? If I sit on that chair and it collapses, that chair is not following its dharma, right? So everything has a dharma, right? The flame has to be hot, and the building has to protect you. The roof can't fall in, So we also have a dharma as living entities. What is that essential nature? So that is explained by Lord Chaitanya. Jivera Swarupoi Krishnera Nityadas. He calls it the Swarup, which is an essential form and activities and qualities. So what is that Swarup of each one of us? Every living entity, including human beings. Who can answer? Sareshwar, you've been coming to class for 40 years. No? Okay. Prakash? Jivera Swarupoi? Krishnera Nityadas. To be an eternal servant of Krishna. So we've lost that. We and everyone else in the material world, we've forgotten that. So we're still servants. We have to serve, but we're not serving Krishna. We're not serving Krishna directly. We're serving his mayak energy, his illusory energy. And that service is more like slavery. It's not full of bliss, eternity, and knowledge. And it's very painful. The results of that service is birth, death, old age, and disease, suffering. So how can we continue to serve, but gradually learn to serve Krishna at every moment with the very same senses and mind that we're now serving Maya? This is the art and science of bhakti, as taught by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to Rupa Goswami and his other disciples who wrote down the practice in books like Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. And of course, Krishna spoke 5,000 years ago, the essential knowledge. That's the foundation of it. So now back to our verse. Here it says Swadharma. Now here Dharma, the Swadharma consists of your special psychophysical nature, which means that you're part of one of these four general categories. Intellectuals, some who have a high brain power. They are meant to be Brahmins in society. And what Krishna just gave us back in text 42, the essential qualities of the Brahmin. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahmins work. Now it's all on the basis of guna and karma, qualities and activity. If you have the qualities but you don't use them, you're not employed as a Brahmin, you're not actually acting as a Brahmin, then you lose your Brahminical status. It's just like if someone goes through law school and they actually get the law degree, but somehow things work out, they can't actually do the work of lawyers, of a lawyer. They're working as a cab driver in New York, then you can't say he's a lawyer. You know, he's a Shudra at that time, manual laborer. So one has to follow these natures, and this is really what part of this verse is about. If one has certain qualities, but he tries to do the work of someone else, then that's not dharmic, really, and that disrupts your own life and society as a whole. When you have, for instance, commonly in America, you have, like you have everywhere, an intelligent class. But they're not meeting these qualities of a Brahmin: peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity. They're serving some millionaire, billionaire or something. They're using their intelligence, how to cheat the public, or create some, whatever you use it for. But it's not for spiritual advancement. It's not for instructing the people in the eternal science of God. So you may have the essential nature of the Brahmin in the sense you have the intellect, but it's being misused. And so you're performing the activity of even an outcast, what to speak of one of the others. You see what I'm saying? So when that's going prevalent in society, then society becomes completely disjointed. No one can trust. This is the big thing, is that the Brahmins have to, the ideal Brahmin is he lived very simply, so he can't be bought off by the politicians. That's the whole idea. The Prabhupada tells a story, I think it was Chanakya Pandit, and he was advising, I think, King Chitragupta, was it? Was it? Chandragupta. So, he's living very austerely, as he is supposed to, and he's giving advice. And then one time, Prabhupada said, the king questioned him and wanted to explain it. And he said, okay, that's it, I quit. In other words, the king is meant to follow the real Brahmin, that he knows the Shastra, he's very wise, Because as soon as he's trying to, mold his advice to what the king wants to hear, then he's become corrupt. You become bought off. And commonly they'll sell information. A perfect example is during the days back in the 60s, I think it was, when finally the tobacco industry it started to be very obvious that cigarettes were bad for your health, And so what was the solution for the tobacco industry? They had all this money, Oh, we'll pay off some corrupt doctors to write a paper, well, it's not actually certain yet. We have these other figures. That's corruption. The Brahminical class, they had the intelligence and so forth. So the same thing is going on today, where you have Exxon. They learned back in the 80s that climate change was happening, global warming, from the product that they're selling. And so their solution was not to, alert the society and try to do some mitigation, whatever, but to pay intellectuals, scientists, in order to write papers, to put doubt in people's mind, so they'll make more profit. This is total corruption. So you have people in a certain class, but they're not actually fulfilling the proper role in that class, and it creates havoc in society. So Srila Prabhupada wanted to create a society of real Brahmins, those who would be learned, self-controlled, peaceful, and Krishna conscious. He makes it a very important point that you can't really be a real Brahmin unless you're Krishna conscious. Brahmajana iti brahmanaha. It says one who knows Brahman, the supreme Brahman, it can really be a Brahmin. Just like you have in Lord Krishna's pastimes, right? You had Krishna blesses the Brahmins' wives. You remember that? So it's very instructive. You had these. He's out in the forest with his boyfriend, with his friends and the cows, and the boys say to Krishna and Balaram, "We're very hungry. What should we do? Can you help us?" So Krishna says, "Well, you go. There's some Yajnik Brahmins there. They're performing sacrifice right now, and you go." And it's really funny because Krishna was not known to be a Kshatriya. They thought he was a Vaishya because all they knew, he was born of Nanda Maharaj. Balaram was known to be a Kshatriya because he was known to be the son of Vasudeva. So he said to them, "Look, you go to these Brahmins and you ask them for some donations of food in Balaram's name. Don't mention my name." because they're very strict about that. So they went there, and the first thing they did said, Krishna and Balaram are close by. They're very hungry, even though they were the ones who were hungry. So they immediately disobeyed that order. But anyway, so the Brahmins wouldn't even stop their sacrifice. They wouldn't give them a simple yes or no. So they went back very discouraged. So Krishna and Balaram laughed and said, now go to the Brahmins' wives. They're in a house that they put them, You go to the Brahmins' wives, and you tell them that we're nearby and that we're hungry. And so they did. And they said, can you please give some food? We'll take it to Krishna. They didn't want to hear about that. They want to go themselves. So they packed up all the tiffins with their most delectable, and they ran out. Where are they? Because they had heard about Krishna and Balaram, and they already loved them. They had a pure. So they saw them, and they saw Krishna, walking through the forest. He had an arm over his friend, twirling a lotus, very beautiful. So that, is a transcendental pastime. But the illustration is, so the Brahman's wife said, look, we can't go back now because we've gone out alone. Our husbands won't accept us anymore. We have to stay with you. That is it. So Krishna said, no, don't worry. They'll accept you. You have to go back. So they went back, unlike the gopis who wouldn't go back. So the gopis are more advanced. Anyway, so eventually the Brahmins who had done their sacrifice said, oh, we blew it. The Supreme Personality of Godhead was nearby. And our wives, and they respected their wives as the spiritual masters. They finally came to. But it's said at the end there that even after all of that and realizing their mistake, and that Krishna, the Supreme Personality, was nearby, they were still afraid of Kamsa, so they didn't go to see him. You see? So they couldn't overcome the material fear. The wives went out, the gopis went out to see Krishna and violated the rules, So the point is that in that pastime is that officially being a Brahmin is not enough, knowing all the mantras and doing the sacrifices. There has a real Brahmin is a Vaishnav, because the degree to which you really know through revelation the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that makes all the difference. So that's a very important to understand, because you have in India today often the Brahmin caste, the caste system. We're just being born in a Brahmin family. Oh, I'm a Brahmin. I can lord it over the other sections of society. But that's corruption. It's guna and karma. One really has to have the qualities. So this whole aspect here that Krishna is describing, Varnashram, as we heard, he went through what are the qualities of the Kshatriya and the actual Vaishya and the Shudra. It's expanded upon greatly in the Srimad Bhagavatam. It's not so easy to be a qualified Shudra. They're also meant to engage in acts of purification and rules and regulations. Otherwise, you're antyaja, you're outside, and outcasts. And then it's very difficult to make progress there. But once again, the essence of Varnashram is to please Krishna. Atak pumbir dvija shrestha varnashrama vibhagasha swanustitasya dharmasa sangsade haritoshanam. The same word that we just read, swanushtitat, is there in this verse. Suanushtitat means performing one's duties very nicely. So here it says, Sutta Goswami is speaking to the assembled sages and munis and devotees there in Naimisharanya. And he's saying, best of the twice-born, Dvija Shrestha, Varnashrama Vibhagasha. In terms of the Varnas and Ashrams, Swanasitasya, Atak Pumbi Dvija Shrestha, Varnashrama Vibhagasha, Swanasitasya Dharmasa, Sangsidhir Haritoshanam. The perfection of the Dharma, of this Varna and Ashram, is to please Krishna. Haritoshanam. That's the measure of success. So, Srila Prabhupada, when he came to America, there was no question of reestablishing right away Varnashram Dharma. He was dealing with people who had unclean habits and so forth, But what he did was he gave the essential purifying process that Lord Chaitanya gave, which is the chanting of the holy name. And from that, people became willing to hear more of the philosophy and the instructions. And they got the spiritual strength when they became regulated in chanting and they surrendered to him and his instructions. so that they became some qualified Brahmins, even sannyasis. And this was very controversial amongst his godbrothers and others, that how could you do this? And so Prabhupada, when he went in 1970 to India, and he had a group of Westerners, he called them dancing white elephants, his disciples. And they would go, Surat was like unreal. Everyone was a devotee in Surat. They were all very devotional. And the devotees would go down and they'd do Harinam. And the people would come with garlands, and they would all be, joining in the kirtan. It was very, very blissful. Because it was unheard of. That here you had outsiders, Westerners, who were thought to be irredeemable, incorrigible. But actually, Srila Prabhupada showed by the process of Sankirtan and chanting and the other processes he taught, real deep purification could take place. And that's the essence of all of this qualification. The actual establishment of Varnashram can come later. First, one really has to act purely and purify, and then one will naturally take his role. Just like I remember when I came to New York and joined, it was quite an amazing center. There was it was one of the two main centers in the world at that time, the other being Los Angeles. And we had 70, 80 devotees there, and we had artists, we had people in the book production department, intellectuals, if you were, and we had pujaris. And I remember there was one devotee, his job all day was just fix the cars. He was very good at that. He had learned how to do that. And everyone was a devotee. And in 6 o'clock, everyone left their job, but they're doing what they were doing for Krishna in this service, and took a shower and came down for arati. And the rest of the night was kirtan and class and taking a little prasadam while we heard Krishna book, take rest. So and then in the morning we all joined together. It didn't matter what your varna and ashram is, you're chanting Hare Krishna. And that makes it possible to be satisfied with your service, no matter what it is. Oh, I can't go on the altar. Prabhupada said explicitly, don't think that the person addressing the deity is any better than the person who is sweeping the floor. It depends on their devotion that they're putting into it. And that's the way in which you can directly realize your equality with everyone as a spirit soul. You're born into a certain family, have certain psychophysical nature. Okay, fine, here's your service. But as you do the service, think of Krishna, chant Hare Krishna, and you become completely satisfied with it. So that's what we're leading up to. We're coming to the end of the book now, and Krishna is soon going to be speaking only, about the essence of bhakti and Brahma Bhuta, and finally Sarvadharma Parityajya. All right, any questions on this purport?
Hare Krishna.
Hari Bol. Who's that?
Vijaya Krishna Das.
Oh, okay. All right. Do you want to ask a question, Prabhu?
Yes, please.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Dravida Prabhu. In the last sentence of the purport, I find the following quote, and he should decide to work only to serve the supreme cause of the Supreme Lord, end quote.
Right.
So my question is, what is this? What is the supreme cause of the Supreme Lord?
Okay. The supreme cause of the Supreme Lord. So, Krishna has many desires, and they all are very auspicious, meaning that his desire for us is that we come back home, back to Godhead. He claims all of us as his children. Aham bija pradakpita, famously in the 14th chapter. Sarva yonisha kontaya mortiyak sambhavantida tasam brahma mahadyoni aham bija pradakpita. I am the seed-giving father of every species of life. Now, but only human beings, and only a small number of them, practically speaking, can get inspired to perform devotional service, which will purify the heart and gradually reveal to one's real relationship with Krishna. So Krishna wants that very much for us. This is something that, we have a hard time doing because it's hard for us to sustain our empathy for that long. If we're empathetic to someone for suffering, that in itself is exceptional in the modern age, that you really care. And there are a lot of people like that. They sacrifice in order to feed the hungry, in order to help, right now, you have the situation with COVID where you have these hospital staff. They're at a tremendous strain. And so many of them are working just because they know that their service is essential for people who are, very sick and maybe dying. That quality is there. But Krishna has that quality in infinite degree. He never abandons us. He's always with us in the heart, right? In every living entity, every species. But for the most part, as the super soul, he's simply guiding each living entity what to do in order to fulfill their karma and go on, like that. Hare Krishna, welcome. Okay. Is this open? This seat? Who is there? You. Please, you sit on a seat. Yeah, you come there. You can sit there. We're on page 690. So the point is that Krishna cares, and he has infinite intelligence in order to organize things in such a way that we can come back to him. So that's his supreme cause. Now, of course, he has many other things. He has his own activities in the spiritual world that are going on. He can expand. Goloka eva nivasatya kilatma bhuto. So at the same time that he's enjoying infinite varieties of loving exchange with countless living entities in their pure state, he's also overseeing, through his expansion, the creation and the maintenance and the destruction of the material world, which is necessary for us to try to work out our karma and eventually get a chance to meet a pure devotee, meet a sadhu, so that we can also become elevated. So Krishna has many things that he's doing, but for our in our immediate concern, the supreme cause of the Lord is that we become Krishna conscious and that we try to spread Krishna consciousness as much as possible. That's the basic principle. And for this age, the incarnation of the Lord that's made that most accessible for us is Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The chanting of the holy name is as simple a process as you could possibly think of, at least in terms of beginning it. To perfect it, not so easy. But to start and experience tremendous benefit is very easy. All that you need is the desire to do it, the willingness to try. So his supreme cause, now here we are in December, so traditionally in December every temple in ISKCON engages in an effort to distribute more books. I remember back in the early 70s when book distribution started to take off, and it was found that in December people are more in a giving mood, they're more open to these things, and so it was found that was a good time to maximize one's efforts too. Now what's the purpose of book distribution? Srila Prabhupada, he pushed it so much, and he wrote the books. Just writing the books was a Herculean effort. He would get up at 12 at midnight. You imagine trying to run this expanding society of thousands of devotees and 100 temples, and devotees writing you all the time, for all kinds of things, and at the same time write these books. It's amazing that he was able to do that, but he did it. And so he realized, and this was following completely in the line of his own spiritual master, the Brihat Madanga, that a book can go so far, farther than the sound of the kirtan in the street, which is also essential. So the Lord's cause of spreading the truth about himself, and his own words, as you will, is facilitated by his great devotees. And his not so great devotees, those who are simply neophytes, can also do it. So this is if they decide to work, the conclusion is that everyone should be engaged according to the particular mode of nature is acquired, and he should decide to work only to serve the supreme cause of the Supreme Lord. So that opportunity is facilitated by this society. Whatever you can bring to the table, you're good with cars. Okay, we need cars to go out and then take care of the cars, and you can feel completely blissful doing it. Chant Hare Krishna as you do whatever it is to keep the cars going. And there's so many cooks are needed, the cleaners, the pujaris, the maintenance people, and everything. And we have also members who are teaching in colleges. I remember that one of the most amazing things was in 1968, a devotee named Rupanuga Prabhu. He started a course in University of Buffalo. He was a qualified teacher. He already had a degree, and so it was. I forget what it was called, but it was of the nature of Eastern religion, something like that. So that was very popular at that time. He was able to teach a course there, and it was basically a course in Krishna consciousness. And Srila Prabhupada even visited there, and so many devotees came out of there. Devotees who later became leaders of the movement, because he taught it, nicely. He was doing, and just so many things came together. There was one devotee named Kushakrata, who was kind of what we call avadut. He was a little bit eccentric. I knew him. He was a personal friend in the 70s. Brilliant scholar, but it was kind of, his social skills were lacking. Let's put it that way, a little bit. But he was a very nice guy, but he was a little eccentric. So he taught himself Sanskrit, and he ended up in 1977, he came to New Dwarka, where the press was, and he joined the Sanskrit department, and before long he was part of it. And gradually, as time went on, the Sanskrit has left because Barbara's books were more or less printed, But he stayed on, and he spent 20 years, practically from morning till night, translating the works of the Goswamis. I remember he would give me verses from that he was working on from Rupa Goswami, and I was into shlokas, and he would give me a verse. I was like, oh no, Yagya Bongo Rishya Shakka Nunna Goda Mega Chakra Vishtipura Kinda Gopa Vikshanopa Jata Kopa Chipta Sabya Hasta Padma Dadi Dota Shaila Sabna Gupta Gosha Raksha Raksha Mata Dadya Panka Jaksha. This is all about the lifting of Govardhan Hill. Yagya Bongo Rishya Shakra. Krishna, he interrupted Indra Yagya. Rishta, and he angered. Shakra is the name for Indra. Indra became very angry. Yagya Banga Rishya Shakra Nunna Goda Megu Chakra, and Indra sent this number of clouds, very frightening. Gora Mega Chakra, Vrishti Pura Kinda Gopa, and the residents of Vrindavan was suffering from the pouring rain and the blocks of ice and the thunder and the lightning and the wind. Yagya Banga Rishya. And Vishtipura Kinnagopa Vikshanopajata. So when Krishna saw that, he became a little angry, Upajata Kopa at Indra, and he lifted up the hill on his left hand. Hasta Padma Shaila Sadma, the Shaila, the big hill, he put on his left lotus-like hand and lifted up and held it up like a little mushroom, like an umbrella. And Gupta Goshta. In this way, he protected the cowherd community. Gupta Goshta. Raksha Raksha Mam Tadadya Pankajaksha. Oh Lotus-eyed Lord, please protect me in the same way today. Just a wonderful treasure he had unearthed, from the Sanskrit. And he did that for 20 years. He translated the entire Stavamala, Stavavali of Raghunath Das Goswami and so many things. So he joined in this Buffalo. And he was he was a little emotionally disturbed at that point, and it said that he was he was in the hospital for a while and couldn't leave, and so they pumped in Prabhupada chanting kirtan, and they told the doctors, yes, this is something that will pacify him, and it really did, and he was able to come out, it's the whole thing. So this is Krishna's mission. This is his the supreme cause. That his name, qualities, pastimes, instructions will be spread, and that certain souls, who are lost, who have been suffering so long, will get the key to begin bhakti yoga, and in this way begin the path back to Godhead. So that's the supreme cause of the Supreme Lord we should work with. If we're in a job, we can give some of the fruits of it, some of our paycheck to help spread Krishna consciousness, support the temple. That's what's meant by this last sentence. And then whatever we're doing, it becomes devotional service. And there's no sinful reaction, just the opposite. There's a very pious reaction. We become purified and joyful at heart. So that's what I can do. Any more discussion on that needed by Vijay Krishna Prabhu?
No, Prabhu. Again, if I may say it, amazing, monumental answer to my question. You're amazing, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
Haribol. All right, let's do one more.
Haribol.
Sahajam karma konteya sadosham apinachajet sarvaramba hi doshena dumen agnir ivavritaha. Every endeavor is covered by some fault, just as fire is covered by smoke. Therefore, one should not give up the work born of his nature, O son of Kunti, even if such work is full of fault. Purport. In conditioned life, all work is contaminated by the material modes of nature. Even if one is a Brahmin, he has to perform sacrifices in which animal killing is necessary. Similarly, a Kshatriya, however pious he may be, has to fight enemies. He cannot avoid it. Similarly, a merchant, however pious he may be, must sometimes hide his profit to stay in business, or he may sometimes have to do business on the black market. These things are necessary. One cannot avoid them. Similarly, even though a man is a Shudra serving a bad master, he has to carry out the order of the master, even though it should not be done. Despite these flaws, one should continue to carry out his prescribed duties, for they are born out of his own nature. A very nice example is given herein. Although fire is pure, still there is smoke. Yet smoke does not make the fire impure. Even though there is smoke in the fire, fire is still considered to be the purest of all elements. If one prefers to give up the work of a Kshatriya and take up the occupation of a Brahmana, he is not assured that in the occupation of a Brahman there are no unpleasant duties. One may then conclude that in the material world, no one can be completely free from the contamination of material nature. This example of fire and smoke is very appropriate in this connection. When in wintertime one takes a stone from the fire, sometimes smoke disturbs the eyes and other parts of the body. But still one must make use of the fire despite disturbing conditions. Similarly, one should not give up his natural occupation because there are some disturbing elements. Rather, one should be determined to serve the Supreme Lord by his occupational duty in Krishna consciousness. This is the perfectional point. When a particular type of occupation is performed for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord, all the defects in that particular occupation are purified. When the results of work are purified, when connected with devotional service, one becomes perfect in seeing the self within, and that is self-realization. So, we have to learn the art of connecting to Krishna with the work that we do. And that's not so easy, and therefore we need guidance. One verse that comes to mind, in Lord Brahma's prayers to Krishna in the 14th chapter, 10th canto. There's a famous prayer, Jnane priyasamudapasya namantaheva jivanti sanmukaditam bhavadiya vartam stane chitak shuddhigatam tanuvan manobir ye prayasho ajitachitopasitaistri lokyam. So the first part of it says, Jnane priyasam. This is directed toward those who are speculators, who are more or less impersonalists, and through Jnana, they're trying to reach the absolute truth. And he's saying, this difficult work of trying to figure out things on our own, of using one's brain power to speculate. And you look at Western philosophy, that's what they did. That's what they do. I don't know if they're still doing it, but all the famous philosophers, they use that technique. But their conclusion must be imperfect because our senses are imperfect, our mind is imperfect. Unless we have a source of infallible knowledge that we can trust, then we remain in darkness. So he says, Gyane Priyasam Adapasya, throw these great efforts at using one's brain power to figure out the absolute truth far away. Well, okay, then what do we do? Jivanti sanmukaditam babadiya vartam. So he's speaking to Krishna. Babadiya vartam means news about you. In other words, words and descriptions of your qualities, names, and activities. Shrutikatam Gyane Priyasam Mantaiva Jivanti Sun, and live in this way. Sun Mukaditam, very important. Sun means the sat, the sadhus, Mukaditam, they're emanating from the mouth. Just hear the sound vibration coming from the mouth of the pure devotees, of your pure devotees. He's speaking to Krishna. Sthanesitak, don't do anything radical. You don't have to change your situation in your social life. In other words, don't immediately do anything to disturb your situation. Just add the process of pure hearing from the right source. That's what he's saying here. Sthani sitak shrutikatam, follow this path of hearing, and then serve those vibrations with your body, words, and mind. Tanuvan manobir. Now, how does one do that? Well, this is the art of and the science of bhakti. How can you serve the words with your body? By following the instructions. There's so many things that we can do. Getting up early, bathing properly. This is the body. We're chanting Japa, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. What do you do with your words? What do you do with your ears and all the other senses? So that's serving with the body. Van, with your words, repeat them. Hearing and chanting. And Manobi, contemplate, think about, use your intelligence, meet amongst each other, discuss, that's good. Tonoban Manobi, serve the vibrations in these ways. And then what's the result? Ye prayasho ajita jita. So he's addressing Krishna. You're ajita. No one can ever conquer you, but you become conquered by these devotees. How is that? Because you can develop love. Krishna is conquered only by love. The demons can never conquer Krishna. The enemies are always killed. But the devotees, he surrenders to. Mother Yashoda certainly conquered him. We just finished Kartik, right? She was able to bind him up, right? And Radharani, she conquers him all the time in their quarrels. The point is that he agrees to be conquered because that's his pleasure, to be conquered by those he loves. So that's the essential factor, is hearing properly from the right source and contemplating the truth and applying it in our own lives. That's the whole process of Krishna consciousness. What should we do? What we should not do? Go all the way back to the last verse of the 16th chapter. We're almost finished with the 18th chapter. Tasmat shastra pramanam te karya karya vivastato. He just finished describing the hellish destination of those who are more and more demonic. This chapter 16, the divine and demonic. The first part is about the divine, but then the rest of it's about demonic. So it says these, they suffer like anything, birth after birth, a hellish, not for eternity, but very great suffering. So how to avoid that? There's 3 gates. Who remembers what the 3 gates for leaving the hell are? Bhakta Prakash. He knows. Lust, anger, and greed. Right. Trivadam narakastedam dvaram nashanam atmana kama krodha tata lobha tasmadeta trayang chajait. Very succinct. It says there's 3 gates leading to this hell he just described. Lust, anger, and greed. The wise soul gives these up. Well, how? That's so. Tasmai taryam chajait. And then he said, Etava mukta konteya tamo dvarais chibiradaha atmanak acharat yatmanak shreyas tato yati padam gatim. Acharat means behavior. It says those who have escaped these 3 gates, acharat yatmanak shreyas, they perform activities for their ultimate good. The first verse we had that word shreya. It keeps coming up. Your ultimate good in your life, and for good for you and for everyone else. And tato yati padam gatim. And then you go to the ultimate goal, back to Godhead. So here's a stark choice we have to make. Can we systematically escape these 3 gates of leading to hell, lust, anger, and greed? So then the next verse he goes back and says, but on the other hand, yakshastra vidamutsraja vartate kamakadata nasa siddham avapnoti nasukam napadam. Now he introduces this idea of shastra. Those who give up the instructions of Shastra, which are nothing but the words of God, and continue to act on their own whims, they cannot achieve happiness, perfection, or the supreme goal. So now he concludes the chapter with this verse that I cited at first. Therefore, tasmat shastra pramanam te, karya babastito. Therefore, one should consult Shastra and accept it as the ultimate evidence, pramana, for what to do and what not to do in one's life. That's the whole thing. Our life is simply doing one thing and not another. But don't just consult. And he hammers it home at the end there. And then understanding clearly what Shastra wants of us, then you should actually perform those activities and refrain from those other activities that are harmful as a matter of duty. Because we're not spontaneously attracted to follow the Shastra. But human beings can have this conception of duty, accepting a higher authority, which we know are acting for our own good. Uh-oh, I completely forgot the time. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Sorry, got carried away. Shri Shri Gaura Nitai ki jai.